Today I'm going to be helping you to get more comfortable on one of these. Yep, a triathlon bike, which I imagine many of you have battled with for some time now, maybe even lost hope that you can ever get comfortable on one of these machines. Well, it is entirely possible, and today I'm going to be showing you how. So here are 6 ways to get more comfortable on your triathlon bike. Okay, if you've just got yourself a new triathlon bike, or you've been battling with getting comfortable on an existing triathlon bike for some time now, well, it's time to get the adult stabilizers out and head back to basics. That means setting your bike up on an indoor trainer and getting used to it in an indoor static setting without any worries about the road, the terrain, the traffic, potholes, or anything else like that. Now, this bike, a triathlon bike, has a very different geometry to a standard road bike setup. So you can cut yourself some flack here because it really does take some getting used to. First off, the saddle may feel a lot higher and further forward than usual, and this is simply due to a steeper seat tube angle, which is designed like that actually so that you can use the AEROBARS more comfortably and more powerfully. As a result though, it may feel like the base bar, which is this bit here, is awfully low. Again, that's normal, so don't worry, but it does take a little bit of getting used to. And of course, we've got the AEROBARS, which if you haven't used before, can feel incredibly strange, but we'll get into a little bit more further detail on those in just a moment. But simply use that indoor trainer to get yourself accustomed to this bike, its different geometry, and if you like, make some tweaks to your position as you go. Which leads me nicely on to our next point. Yeah, it's so important to get your position on a triathlon bike right. Now, I will admit, it's a rather odd and unusual setup, so any issues with your position tend to be felt 10 times more than you may be used to on a road bike. So for that reason, I'd fully recommend getting some expert advice, or better, a professional bike fit. Now, I do appreciate that's going to cost you further money, but there's no point having a nice bike, a nice triathlon bike like this, if you can't ride it comfortably or as well as you may be used to. And also, it's worth pointing out that what works for one person may not necessarily work for another. You may be the same height, but you may have a completely different bike frame size, saddle height, reach, and so on. And another tip that I've recommended to use in videos before is a type of run-walk method when it comes to your use of the AEROBARS. So rather than committing to 10, 20 or 30 minutes at a time in your AEROBARS simply because you feel that's what you should be doing, start out by simply doing a couple of minutes in the AEROBARS followed by a handful out, and keep repeating that over and over. And with time you can start increasing the durations in the AEROBARS and reducing those out, and hopefully just getting more used to using the AEROBARS and being in that position. Again, this is something you can start out doing on the indoor trainer before taking it outdoors when you're more confident. And build on this AEROBAR comfort, there's actually a couple of tweaks we can make to our setup that can drastically change and improve our feel and comfort when we're in them. So one of which is the tilt in the AEROBARS, and you may see people with a slight tilt up towards the end, and that just helps prevent that feeling of slipping forwards when you're in the AEROBARS. You'll see on mine, although it's relatively flat, it does come up towards the end, and that just helps make me feel like I'm nicely wedged and locked into position. You may see others with a more extreme upwards tilt towards the end. You might have to change out the AEROBARS to achieve that, or you may simply be able to do it by adjusting the angle from the base bar or stem region, or getting a little shim that goes in under the elbow pads. Another tweak you can make is actually to do with your position of the bike computer, so it's more or closer to your line of vision. I know that sounds really silly, but having a bike computer way back down your stem can actually make it quite fraught and uncomfortable when you're trying to check it all the time, as well as making you look a bit like a nodding dog. So if you can, push that bike computer further up the AEROBARS, as I've got. And it wouldn't be a video about bike comfort without talking about saddles. Oh no, I've known pro athletes to jump off the bikes mid-ride and throw the bikes into hedges simply because their saddles are uncomfortable. So what do we do? Well, my personal recommendation would be the split nose saddle design. It's not for everyone, but with us being in a more forward position when we're using the aero bars and putting more weight towards the front of the saddle, more pressure, the split nose design just helps to relieve some of that pressure. It's been an absolute game changer for myself, and I know plenty of others, but it is important that you find what works best for you. It's another major contact point with the bike, so it's really worth trying before you buy if you can. Actually, a lot of local bike shops do offer this service just to make sure that you find the right saddle for yourself and you're really comfortable with that. It's also worth noting that the tilt of the saddle can make a huge difference. Just a couple of degrees here or there can be all it takes. I actually set my saddle up perfectly flat and then I just drop it down by a couple of degrees, but it really does make a huge difference for myself. And finally, it is worth taking a look at your body. I'm not talking about the shape and the size of it. I'm talking about your flexibility, your core strength, your glute strength, even your shoulder strength. Now, when you're in the aero bars, obviously it's a very different position to your road bike position. So it does require a little bit more flexibility. And with that, you're putting a little bit more weight down through your shoulders when you're in the aero bars. And to hold that position, you really need to engage your core. And as a result, because you're in a more aggressive position, you do tend to load your glutes up a little bit more. So if you don't have the adequate strength and flexibility in those areas, you can simply start to fatigue and become more uncomfortable, and a knock-on effect, obviously, your performance will deteriorate. So I'd really recommend factoring in at least one session per week where you really address this through some flexibility and some conditioning, and generally just looking after your body. Now, if you do want any help or tips and advice for this, we have plenty of videos over on our channel. Just head on over there to find them. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If so, please do give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and don't forget you can head on over to GTN's social media channels, give them a follow, and if you're not doing so already, give us a little subscribe down below.